that we feel that the cluster advisors are a real important arm for the association, especially when it comes to communication. You all live there, you have neighbors, you have the close relationships, and it can be the eyes and ears of the association for people who need help, or let us know here at the office if there's somebody in a unit or by a unit that maybe shouldn't be there, or anything.
All concerns
About what happens. So our intention today not only is to go over the budget, but basically it's to try to re-energize us, if you will, and maybe it's on the board agenda for Monday's board meeting to try to increase our numbers to get coverage in all of the clusters, thereby making the organization what it can be and how it can help the association. And Sue's been a driving, Sue's your president, she's been a driving force in trying to re-energize everything here.
At the workshop, what I've asked the directors to do is to go to the webpage and to look at the list of the cluster advisors. And, like in my cluster, I know who my advisors are. And I've worked already to reappoint somebody who left. So I'm kind of asking the board members to re-energize the people we've lost, or the people who really don't want to be a cluster advisor. Somebody just said, you're a cluster advisor, and they said, okay. And they really don't want to be a cluster advisor. And you can't blame them. And if you don't want to be, they don't want to be. But I'm hoping the directors will kind of say, I know the people in, like in Pinehurst, Cookie and Roger know the people in A, B, and C. And so if nobody's there, maybe they will get to those people and try to get somebody who really wants to be a cluster advisor and understands that what you do as cluster advisors, it's really important, much more so than I think we give you credit for. And it's about time we gave you more credit for what you do. And I looked at the job description on the webpage, and it really is not adequate. But I think the cluster advisors need to look at it and figure out what to do. And John knows already. John, that the last sentence is it has to come off completely by statute, right?
By statute.
So the last sentence that says the committee should assist the board with surveys, deliver annual meeting packets, and Wildwood Spring directories. That comes off because we don't do directories anymore. They're all online. And I believe the annual meeting packets
by statute has to go with it when elections are involved, has to go in a mailing. But I might add also that we are going to discuss potential electronic mailings at the meeting too, in order to possibly have some savings, because of mailing costs have gone up so radically, and paper costs.
But I don't know about surveys, John, if they could still.
So yes, absolutely. Surveys and things like that could go very well.
So this whole job description needs to be looked at, not only by the directors, but by those of you who are the cluster advisors. I mean, I know that like in our area, they always do the Christmas decoration, but they don't do it alone. Paula's already gotten people that are going to help. It's a community event, people, it's not her doing it alone. It becomes a community type thing, something that binds us together. So, like some of us have carport get-togethers. Once again, those are things that bind our community together. So, but I think you're a really, really important part of what goes on here at Wildwood Springs. And for too long, I think you've been not.
Yeah, well, I think wellness checks are really important for some of the people that, that are older and not well.
Pardon me?
Wellness checks.
Yeah, wellness checks are very important, So not only does it.
But that's complicated. Right?
It can be if you know the person or checking. I've got a couple of neighbors that I check on all the time.
Yeah, I don't think it's a formal thing. It's informal. People kind of,
Sure.
nothing formal. Just
John,
people
I might mention that Sue is one of those talking heads, because all we could see was sort of the top of her head. So you need to you need to change.
Talking
Yeah,
head.
that's better.
Oh,
I like that, a talking head.
All right, well, somehow we got off, we're off on left field here. And I don't know why. Oh, I guess I can get us back. We lost the picture.
Oh,
Here we go. Here we go.
okay,
Okay.
there's the talking head back again.
Anybody else join us in the interim? Good.
no, we just have, we have 3 cluster advisors here.
Mhm, mhm.
Tiffany, Lynn, and Deb.
Yeah, and we have 4 here and El Presidente.
So any other comments along those lines, the importance and things that we really and truly need cluster advisors to know and to give us input on your importance, because you are important.
Yes, you can tell friends and neighbors how much fun it is and that they'll want to join.
Yeah,
Sure. Okay. It is one way, when I interview everybody that comes, whether they be tenants, leasers, or owners, and we do talk about the system of communication. And, they all want to know, am I restricted to pool 3? And I say, no, you can go to any pool, and it's a good way to meet people and come to the meetings and meet people. And hopefully we'll be again having in-person meetings where people will be able to come and share some thoughts, and somebody can put a face with a voice and a name and
Right.
stuff of that nature, And I did, by the way, contact the church today, and they did say that they would welcome us back anytime we're ready to go.
great, that's important.
So, okay. Any other further questions along that line?
Where would we find a copy of the job description?
I
I've sort
will,
of been out of,
all right, that's a good question. And what's going to happen is that the operations manual is being renovated, or is being amended and updated by a committee. That'll come out very soon. Currently, you can look on the web and have a definition, but it's somewhat out of date.
It's the one that I just read to you. That's really, that's the only one there is.
Oh.
So hopefully it will be updated with your assistance as well, giving update. You don't have a leader right now, but hopefully you will get together and figure out, once we get some numbers, I hope to have another meeting and you guys elect.
So Elaine is no longer. the
No,
chair.
she is no longer the
She's
chair.
going to stay as advisor, but
But not
she's
the
had to
chair.
leave.
As
Yes.
Oh.
the chair.
And you'll call us together.
Yeah, I think
fill
that-
in the blanks.
Yeah, well, I will coordinate it here.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Any further questions? Okay, without any further ado, as they say, the cluster advisors are actually the committee appointed by the declaration of condominium. It says that the advisors shall meet as a committee minimally once a year and have the budget discussed, or proposed budget in this case, because we won't pass it until Monday, but have a general idea. And that's, again, for communication. Should some people ask, what is this, or I don't understand that, or what have you, you can have a little bit of information here available. And number 2, you're always welcome to contact me, and I'll be happy to help you. As I've gone around, and as you know, I do it twice a day most of the time, certainly once a day for sure. People have stopped and asked and talked about the budget and the ramifications and how it affects not only next year, but the year after. And so there's been some very good questions. There haven't been a lot, but maybe you'll have some of your own, or somebody has asked you all, or you've been to the pool where nothing gets discussed at all, I'm sure. Okay. For those, hopefully those of you on Zoom have copies of what we're to talk about. They were mailed to everybody in the mailing, and that's basically the reserves and the operation budget. Now, I think the most distinguished, if I will, teacher of the reserve concept is Sue to my side. She has more or less developed this thing long before I got here. And we established it, and the reserves are required by state statute to fund the expenses in the future to ensure the capital assets of the community are maintained in a proper basis. And to do that, we have what's called reserve calculations. And to fund it, we have cash flows and yearly expenditure sheets to anticipate the dollars to come. And believe it or not, most of them match up. So if you see that something is 10 years from now going to be done, hopefully in the 10th year on the scenario, it'll show up in the 10th year, and then by then the money's collected. Does anybody have any questions about reserves in particular?
Could I just go through something, John? I
Sure.
don't, I only have the second page on this one. Do you have page one?
Yeah.
Year one.
Yep.
Thank you very much. If you look at the pooled reserves, year one, that's 2022 coming up.
I don't think I have page one either.
Uh-oh.
It's not this, right?
No,
No,
it's this one.
maybe it got out of order. Or
Yeah,
maybe-
because
I
I was
don't
trying to
have
put
it.
mine in order. They were out of order.
Yeah.
Is it this one?
No.
I got a
It says
blank
at the
page
top.
too.
Maggie,
Wildwood Springs,
Mm.
2022 pooled reserves.
Oh, okay.
I have
Year
some on
one,
no,
no,
you have page 2 and 3. Somehow the copier must have eaten page
Could've.
1. Aggie, we got a confirmation here, a conflagration. We never got to page 1 of this copy.
I guess.
Everybody's there in that one. Can you make 6 copies real quick?
Okay, yeah, I don't have that one. That's probably what this one is. I got a blank piece of paper.
Could be.
I got
Could-
blank too.
that's.
Yeah,
That's
that's probably what
Probably,
it
it
was.
probably slipped through.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
she was giving us something to write on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, you want a blank piece of paper?
Oh, no, I'm good. thank
Oh, okay.
Should be right back. Hopefully you all have it in your packets. Sue's talking about the 3-page document that says what the yearly expenses broken down each year are. And it starts with, oh, she took the page.
Yeah.
Somehow the copier must have eaten it.
know, sometimes it feeds through
Here.
8 or 10 pages at a time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcome. For those out there, if you have it, it should be Wildwood Springs, and it should be 2022 pooled reserves, cash flow plan details, calculation done on 7/26/21. And it starts with year 1, 2022. Hopefully we're on the same page. Hello.
Okay.
Okay, no, we lost a picture here, and that's why, again, I don't know why. Okay,
And it
all right,
really,
Sue, go ahead.
yeah, and it really does go, actually, I used to do like a little seminar every year to explain how this budget, I'm just gonna do it quickly because I have to tell you, it really does go from one step to the other. So if you look at year 1, which is 2022 coming up, and you look at this page here that you all have, and it's called the 2022 pooled reserves. And if you look at 2022, the estimated expenses of $200,015, it will match the total of this one here.
Sure.
So they really do match all of these as we're doing that. I mean, I'm not going to go through it all with you, but maybe someday I'll do another one of those seminars, John, and go through with all of the board and everybody. So they really do flow completely and they make complete sense, as well as it does on this, the required reserve, which John does a wonderful job of putting together every year, and I would explain that to you as well. But this year, we are planning on spending, this is what's really important in the year 2022, out of our reserves, we are planning on spending $200,015. That's what's going to come out of our reserves.
And the calculation obviously starts at the beginning on the top of the left with what we anticipate to have in the bank at the beginning of the year.
Right.
Then we have a contribution of $500,000 during the year,
Right.
and so on.
And that is always the same at this point, the 500,000. But maybe someday I'll go back through everything, but I want you to say that really and truly is consistency on all of these forms that John puts together. They move from one form to the other form consistently right across.
Okay. Reserves, any question about reserves in general?
Do they know what reserves are?
Well, yeah, reserves by state statute are expenses the association will have that will extend the life of a capital asset, such as the refurbishing of the slabs that we're doing upstairs. We're extending the support life by 15 to 20 years. Repainting that comes up every 7 to 10 years. Repaving that comes up every 18 to 20 years. The state says that for everything over $10,000, including, well, let me start again, must include paving, painting, and also any expenses that exceed $10,000 can be considered a reserve. But the association in its own, each association is somewhat different. Some have elevators, some have don't have swimming pools, some have swimming pools, on and on and on. So you might go to an association that has 15 to 16 like we do, or you might go to an association that could have 35. Roofing being another responsibility. So it's up to us to determine when these needs are going to be required, and then try to fulfill them in an orderly basis so the money is there to avoid special assessments. The fee ranges come up sometime and people say, well, you know, you're paying $11.50 a quarter and I'm only paying $8.50 or whatever. But then you find out they're not funding any reserves. And that happens, as many of you know. I had a company that managed well over 80 properties, and you'd be surprised, probably 70% of those communities underfund or do not fully fund their reserves. And when it's time to paint or pave or put roofs on, they knock on your door and ask for money.
Let me show you an easy one so you'll understand this proposed reserve funding sheet that you have there. I'm going to go through one, and remember this, and they all work the same way, but just that the math is easier on this one. So let's look at office roof, which is a new one that we put on this year because for some reason we hadn't thought about doing it. So look at office roof. The title on that column says that the roof on this office has a useful life of 10 years. That's what has been calculated by the roofers and John. That roof here is going to last us for 10 more years. You understand that part, right? So how many remaining years do we have? We have 10 more years useful life here. What's it going to cost us in 10 years from now to replace that roof? $160,000. That's the third column. Right now, the balance there as of December 31st, 2021, we don't have anything in that fund. So the full requirement fund this year, we have to put $16,000 into the reserve fund. And that means for the next 10 years, $16,000 out of this reserve will be saved in this little pot. So that in 10 years from now, 16,000 times 10 will give us $160,000 that we need to replace this office roof. Capiche?
Quick
Yes.
question,
Yes, Pat.
full funding requirement per year, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you looking at office roof? or
Yeah,
commercial?
office
Yes.
roof.
She went.
Oh, it's on the
Oh,
back part.
Down the car.
I'm sorry,
That's
I mean
all right.
office roof. It's the
That's all
same,
right.
it's the
They were
same
right
thing.
next
They're
to
all the
each
same.
other.
That's what I
Yeah.
meant, okay?
Yeah.
So, but I wanted to do an easy one so you get the
Yeah.
mathematical
Yeah.
thing there. Now, sometimes, remember on this, John has the ability, sometimes if we have an extraordinary need come up and we're short, he can flip from one to the other. We have that option, and then we'll make it up later on. So he does, because sometimes something comes up, an emergency that we have to take care of. So we might have to pull it from one of those. But just so you know, that is the pure formula. When you're talking about a reserve funding, that's what you do.
And your estimates include inflation. and
Yes.
all-
Well, you
all
do the
Yes.
best you can
Yeah.
do. It's an
Currently,
estimate.
we talk, there are statistics out there that
Yeah.
guide us. Right now, it's like 1.4%.
Okay.
And that goes into there. And sometimes it comes down lower because things change. And if you were to follow, say, the painting, which you don't have the years in front of you, but our warranty is 8 years. But the paint condition is good. And we've been doing this washing to get some of the mold and mildew off the buildings. And having just finished, we can test the buildings. There's little or no chalking. So right now, we're aiming for 10 years. So if you look at the schedule, 8 years ago, it would have said, we need X amount of money in 8 years. But now we've been able to extend it because the product is working, so it can vary. And so sometime you'll see something drop, but something increase because the life may not be.
It changes.
Yeah.
Remember, it's every year, and every year I really and truly look. I just do it. I do look and compare, and I will compare this to last year's, and then I'll call John and I'll ask why. And he'll tell me why. I mean, because there are things like that he'll say, well, because our paint job is lasting us longer than what we thought it was going to do. Or I had to move from here to here because of this reason. So I really do look at these every year, and I go back and ask John, which everybody has the right to do. But that is the formula, and he does a great job of putting those all together. But it is all strictly a formula, but it's all estimates. I hope that makes
And
sense.
it's important because it's your future.
Yeah.
And it's your future to the point where maintenance fees may vary, unfortunately. But if we have the reserves right, you won't have to write that additional check when it comes up. And certainly for the next 5 to 7 years, everything is well in order. Okay. As far as the capital assets. Okay, we just finished a 10-year paving. We have one more issue. We got to do Wildwood Springs Boulevard, but that'll be over, and we won't have to worry about any of the quote unquote paving probably until 2032, 34 or something of that nature. So
Maybe we'll be
I
here, maybe
I hope
we
we'll
won't.
all hear.
Anyway, I hope,
I
I
plan to
want
be.
you to have an idea of how this, and there really is a method to all of this.
So is that
And they all match.
that paving this year?
Do we have paving next year? Then what we have next year is going to be resealing
Right.
of all the paving projects that we did.
Uh-huh.
And then the following year, we're going to be doing Wildwood Springs Boulevard.
Okay.
And then truly everything is over for a really extended period of time for paving.
Okay.
Okay.
When they're resealing, are those the same people that do the, okay, because I forgot to get in touch with you when they.
I
were
will,
doing that.
I haven't forgotten,
Yeah, Okay,
okay, because you still got a couple of minor things to do.
Yeah.
Okay,
okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
any questions? Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go to the operating budget now. As you know, the Budget Committee has been working since July. And why July? Well, July ends up, it gives us 6 months of figures. So we take a look, and it's more or less of a report card of what last year's budget was, if you will. And with 6 months figures, we understand trends and things of that nature. And so that's the way they start to build the budget, by looking at what happened last year and what we anticipate in the next year. Then in August, we start asking the committees to come forward with their thoughts for the year. And those are integrated in there. And then September and August, we slug it out to see how much we have to spend or what we must spend. Unfortunately, for the first time in many years, last year's budget got whacked somewhat by unexpected electrical costs. Pretty hefty electrical costs. We had some underground wiring that had deteriorated to the point where it needed to be replaced, which we're now anticipating in the future to have to cover that expense. But the biggest hit was a 18% increase in insurance. We were told when we figured last year's budget that we should figure about a 12% increase. The year before's budget was $305,000. So the budget committee for 2021 put in a figure of $335,000, which so they raised it roughly 10%.
If you want to look at that, it's account number 6030, excuse me, on the first page.
And I'm here again talking generalities, but when the bill came in, it was $376,000 instead of the anticipated 335. Well, that money has to come from somewhere. The good news was that over the years, we have been building a fund and had the money to pay the bill, but shot the fund completely. So this year we had, it gets a little bit complicated, but so for this year, we had to fund 100% of due next March, plus the shortfall that we paid in the beginning of the year. So that's why you see a pretty good increase in the 2022, because we're making up for the shortfall that we spent the money, but it wasn't in the budget. Now that money that we're collecting for next year also is anticipated to cover the increase anticipated in 2023. So the massive hit for insurance should not be with us. And if we don't have a 12 to 14% increase in insurance, then we'll start to develop a small surplus, which is how we had the money from before, if that makes sense. So what happens in insurance, it's not just a yearly budget. You almost have to anticipate what's going to be done, what's going to be owed the next year, because we renew in in March. And so we don't have the benefit of collecting all the money and paying the premium in December. We have to have money at the beginning of the year. So that's why it's a little bit more complicated. The other thing the budget committee had to deal with is a 5% increase in cable. And that's a contract that we have another, I believe it's 2 years to go. At that point, I've already been asked, can we maybe make other decisions on services? And of course, that'll be up to the board, but the last contract that we negotiated seemed to be beneficial to the association because we were able to lower everybody's internet costs from 59 to 10. And they also gave a check for $111,000 as an enticement to the association to sign the contract. Of course, they're reaping the benefits now. We reaped the benefits a little bit earlier, but there may be different things. I mean, you say, what could happen? Well, and an order sent to me, I watch basic cable. I just watch kind of 20 channels. We have 300. I don't think any of us watch 300 channels on a regular basis, but we may watch more than 20. But the thought being is, since everything's gone up so much and it's the extra channels that seem to raise the pricing, maybe we go back to a basic for everybody that would lower the fees, and those who want the HBOs or those who want the whatever they would be, art channels or what have you, could pay for it. So, I mean, there's things to look at, or maybe it's time to look at fiber optics and get rid of cable completely, or maybe everything will be streaming by then and something else will come up. So yeah, we're kind of locked into an increase in the next 2 years, but there may be a light at the end of the tunnel too for cable.
Could I ask?
Yeah.
Go back to the insurance expense.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I got confused.
Can everybody hear Patty?
My question is that I understand the 412,000 to include your estimated actual insurance cost plus making up for 31,000 roughly. And then a little more makeup because we're putting some in a pot for the future.
That's correct.
Okay, and so if I say that in the cluster, that's roughly right?
You hit it right on the
Okay.
top of the nail head.
Thank you.
Yep. So the third driving factor before we even look at expenses, other than the insurance expense and the cable expense, was the amount of money the association has been able to, in many cases, you could say, give back to the owners. We've had surplus operating funds for the past few years. What is that? Surplus operating fund is the amount of money in your cash account that really is not encumbered to pay insurance, is not encumbered to pay a month's of salary, is not encumbered to pay $500 worth of petty cash. It's not encumbered to have people who've prepaid their maintenance fees, and it's not encumbered by accounts payable if they haven't been any. So you could take those various things away from the amount in the operating fund and you come up with a figure.
Can I give another explanation? to
Sure.
that? It's kind of like when you set up your own personal budget and you say, it's gonna cost me A, B, C, and D. And at the end of the year, even though you budgeted $200 for everything, it really only cost you $190. So you had $10 left. That's kind of like what happens here. We budget $200,000, but we only spent $150,000. So that surplus operating fund is money that we thought we would have to spend in our operating budget, but we didn't need to spend it all. So we had a surplus in our operating fund. Right, John?
Right on, right on. And basically that fund started in 1979 when the association started. And the money was put in, and in those days, of course, until it was turned over to the owners, if there was a deficit, the developers had to put it in. But over the years, this fund has accumulated. Some say, well, maybe we were overcharged. Maybe. Some say, well, maybe we didn't do all the things we should have done. So it's who knows why, but
Doesn't make any difference.
it's the history of the association. The good news is, those of you who have been here for a period of time, and those of you who are even new, get the benefit of a little give back. Okay, and the give back last year was $70,000. Now the board has determined that the surplus number, and there's no account for surplus, it's just a number of dollars in the pot. That surplus really shouldn't go below 100,000 because of emergencies.
And that's just something we determined. Another board could come in and say, no, let's put it back in. It's just what the board determined. Another board could change it, but that's what we've determined right now. In case of an emergency, had a big storm, we would have $100,000 there to make up if we had some big expenses.
And exactly when Emily came through, as you remember, we lost all those big trees and things of that nature. It cost us $94,000 to clear debris and to fix the roofs and other things that got damaged. And so it's kind of a basic, but it's a true figure, along with the fact that here again, there were many associations in our area that had the similar cleanup that had to assess their people.
And we didn't charge anybody anything. We took it out of that money that was left over that we didn't spend, and it was and remember, there's no account for it. It's just what was left over from our previous operating funds that we didn't use. And John keeps an accounting of that fund. Doesn't have a fund number. It's just what's left over at the end of the year. But we had the money therefore to take care of that and didn't have to charge our owners any more money.
Well put, yes. And then I give them that figure on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
So they see, kind of see where it goes, and it fluctuates, obviously. If you pay all of your insurance in 1 month, you're gonna have less cash, for that month, but it fluctuates. So last year, we were able to take 70,000 from the surplus and just take that we calculate the money we need to fund the expenses. And if it turns out to be $2 million and we want to take $100,000 out of the surplus, then the owners will pay $1,900,000. If you understand what I'm saying. Okay, and props.
Yeah.
Everything is relative as far as size wise and everything else. So this year we had 30,000. So that means that $40,000 had to be immediately put in the budget to fund what we didn't fund last year. Okay, and so that turned out to be somewhere around $7 a unit a month. And so what does that mean now, to get ahead of ourselves, but I shouldn't, but next year, if we don't have $30,000, first $30,000 of the budget is going to cost about $5 a unit a month. If we don't have it. If we have it, then fine.
Yeah, so what John is saying is that what your fees would have been this year, we took that 30,000, divided it up among all the units, and we took that 30 and gave everybody back your money, by the way. It wasn't our money to do, and gave you back part of your money towards your fees, which brought your fees down a little bit. Now, next year, if we don't have any extra money in that operating fund, we won't supplement anybody because we want to keep it. But that's what he's saying, basically. It's your money, you got it back towards your association fee, correct?
Correct. And the supplementation has been going on for 7 years.
Yeah, so we had that extra money. And actually, it was not, it was really, I have to say, grateful. How much did you, when John came in as our manager, that money had been accumulating for I don't know how long. What did you find that we had accumulated, John, in that fund?
Well, it was almost $600,000.
Sitting there. That was the owner's money that the previous people just let that extra or that surplus operate and just sat there. So that's when he brought it up and we started giving it back to the owners as a supplement towards their fees.
And part of that was the fact that when my first year here, we painted everything. And we had to do over $100,000 worth of wood repair
Yeah.
that probably should have been done before
Long time.
because we didn't want to paint rotted wood. So that's how that fund may have developed, because here again, no aspersions towards anybody before, but some of it, we needed to do a lot of work just to paint.
Yeah.
So that's how we arrived. Then the committees come in and they landscape the building and so forth, with pool, and they give us thoughts of what they need for the year, along with, as Sue has developed, again, a 3-year plan. And it is what you would like to do in the next 3 years for your committee. It could be replacing flower boxes. It could be, I don't know, buying new pool heaters. It could go anything, additional furniture or what have you. And then that each committee submits that to the budget committee. And the budget committee sensitizes it, does what it feels it should, puts some in the budget, says, oh, okay, you may have to wait 2 years for this, and so forth. One of the things that the security committee wanted to add additional camera stations, and the committee felt right now that that's unnecessary for the next 2 years with the number of cameras we have and things of that nature. So that's kind of how that works.
And those 3-year plans are changed every year based on the need, but at least it gives them a thought process. For 3 years, what do you think you're going to need? Next year, they might change it completely, but it puts something in perspective.
So what does it mean, bottom line? It means that if you took insurance, cable, and the less revenue because of the operating surplus, all the other expenses, believe it or not, are just about what they were last year. I mean, matter of fact, I think they're like $3,000 less. I don't know how or why, but it worked out that way. So, we do look at inflation, and of course, you living it, I'm living it, and who knows what this year is going to be and bring out.
Yeah.
But the budget seems to be adequate. It's balanced, and it's, to my knowledge, the way it's structured. And you can see on one of the pages, the breakout of the monthly fees to each unit. It ranges from about $60.50 for a 2,300 per quarter raise to about $57 to a 900. And that's because everything is based on square footage, except for cable TV, because that's the same price as everything. So your reserve contribution and your operating budget contribution is based on the square footage of your unit. Questions?
Does it make a little sense to you? People on Zoom, does it make a little sense to you, I hope?
Did we put you to sleep?
Uh,
Are they there?
I guess I need to ask a question.
Sure.
I just wanna,
Can you hear us?
I understand the electrical repairs, the uptick in insurance cost, uptick in the cable contract. It, basically you're saying, in terms of the surplus operating fund, that we're taking less from that than we have in the past.
We don't have any more to give.
There's none to take. So that accounts also for the need, we have less revenue than
Right.
we used to have. So there's, when we're talking to people in our cluster, those are the four things to say in terms of why we need to have an increase in our fees.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
And should we fortunate enough, should the insurance come in at an 8% rise? And should, as Sue said earlier, should we not have to cut as many trees? Or suppose we end up with 50, our budget is about $2.8 million. So if we end up with 25 or 30 or even $40,000 worth of surplus, we might be able to have 30 next year again.
Okay.
So we don't know.
Budgets are all ifs. And remember, the last maybe 5 years, we've had some very big expenses because we are an old community also. First of all, we had the stack pipes. And I don't remember, John, how much that cost us.
$545,000.
A lot of money. After the stack pipes, then we had the upstairs landings, and that is costing us approximately,
Well, the way we're currently doing it, it's about $5,000, and we have 141 of them to do, 5,000 each. We're now anticipating the cost to be a little bit less, like 2,500. We've got 37 to do, so we still have 104 upstairs to, and that's to ensure the structure.
that's
Is
another
there-
point.
And structure is a big thing when you think about what happened in Florida. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
in Miami.
Yeah.
But I mean, we don't have 20
That's fine.
floors coming down, but you also don't want to walk out upstairs and have everything come down below you.
So with that in mind, I also have to remain very positive and say, you know what, in 2 years from now, we might get a real break and maybe we won't have a major repair. But remember, everything in budgets are estimates. If we get that break, we will see a huge difference in our budget, but you don't know that. But yes, do I want to remain positive and say, you know what? It could happen. So we'll see. We'll do our budget every year and see what our needs are.
It's never happened in our house, but.
Well, you know what? Never say never. Never say never. You never know.
This is helpful,
Good.
and I think it will help people. Help us
I hope so.
explain.
How about questions from the audience, or those of you on Zoom? Anything? Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
I would like to say that after the next board meeting, which will be Monday, hopefully we'll have a little better idea to get more people in on our cluster advisors. It might take a month, right, John, you think? But as soon as we get more people in the cluster advisors, hopefully we'll have another meeting with the new cluster advisors, get everybody together and get somebody who will be the chair. And then maybe we could have a meeting and I could really go through and explain the budget, do an in-service like I used to do every year for anybody who wanted to come, and get everybody together and have kind of like a little social, get to know each other and go through the budget a little bit more and let you know how really important your input really is to Wildwood Springs.
Donuts or martinis? Which
I
one?
take vodka.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
We'll have a big crowd.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I used to belong to a homeowners association that always met at 7 o'clock, but they got together at 5:30 and had a cocktail party first, and sometimes it got very interesting.
Yes.
Anyway, anything else?
I want to thank all of you. I really do
Yeah.
appreciate it. And like I say, the biggest thing is coming up with an accurate job description. And and I don't know, you'll have to figure out and have input and talk to your directors. There might be some people think it's important for them to be here 12 months out of the year. I'm not sure that's important. That's going to be input from you. They might be able to handle it even if they are gone some of the months out of the year, via telephone or something. I don't know. You guys have to talk to your directors about those things and give them input.
Yeah, and hopefully, obviously, the office is always here. so-
Exactly, yeah.
So things can work that
I
way.
mean, if you think that's important, you need to tell people, your directors in the office. If it's not important, if you think you can communicate via the telephone, cluster advisors, I think that's, you know what you have to do or what you want to give to Wildwood Springs and what would be the most helpful.
And this could be so much fun, we might even
Yeah.
get assistant advisors, so everybody could have an assistant.
I mean, it really can be a fun thing. So I want to thank all of you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for all.
All
that
right.
you do.
Yeah.
If I may, John.
Yes,
Several years ago, when we first had a new website, we had a cluster advisor meeting where we did a little presentation of what the website looked like and how people could access it. So I think that one of the things, perhaps after the first of the year, I'm kind of like to revisit that if we could with the cluster advisors, and we can do another demonstration of what's on the website, how to find things on the website,
Another party.
how to
Yeah.
find out who your neighbors are, and
That's
several
great,
things
Chris.
like that.
Margaritas for that.
Yeah.
margaritas on that one, they said. Yeah. Anyway, that's a great idea, Chris, because
Yes.
you're right, because it was very beneficial at that time.
Thank you. That's good.
Thanks a lot.
There you go.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chris, appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.